Let's give your feedback on your PowerPoint. And this is a title slide or opening slide. I like the picture you chose. It shows many cool animals, definitely eye-catching, attention-drawing, grabbing. The text, okay, it's kind of hard to create a good contrast with this background. And you use the border around the font. That's a really good technique. For kindergartners, I don't think you're really trying to teach the word classifying animals, so I guess it's not that important. The attention should be more on the picture, so I'll just give you some technique, little tip that you can use to create a better contrast. I use this technique often when it's hard to find the right color to create better contrast. With this approach, you can still see through the black background because it's semi-transparent. So it's not totally interfering with the background. It's sort of a good compromise. A new term, so it's bigger, that's good. And the arrows showing the backbone, because you're talking about the backbone. And because you're talking about the bone, showing the picture of bone is a really good way to illustrate. Since these two pictures are side by side on the same picture, same slide, you can easily make connections between these two. Well done. And they're also showing some characteristics of mammals. Yeah, I can see the hair texture, so it should be okay. Let's try if it's gonna be even clearer if I make it bigger. Yeah, I think it gets clearer as it gets bigger. So you could make it bigger. And you can still have text showing on the slide. I like it better actually because I can actually see the texture better. And of course you have to make the text readable, so you can do something like, voila. If you think these background stripes are in the way, you could probably get rid of it. Because you know that it's about mammal, you're making sure that you're on staying on a topic of mammals right now. So without the title mammals, I don't think there's any confusion. But having this is not gonna interfere with the background image too much because it's filling the whole screen anyway. If you take that into consideration, take what I said earlier into considerations, you don't necessarily have to have mammals here, but if you do decide to have it on a slide, that's okay. And one thing you want to think about is the impact, how much impact it's going to create when you show this slide. What's the main thing you want to show on the slide? That's what you have to think about it. And yeah, main thing is definitely the picture. Then second thing you kind of want them to see is this: feed milk to the baby. That's what you're gonna actually saying, so this is a redundancy. So the less importance is given to the text here than to the picture. So let's rearrange the slide according to the importance and priority. So yeah, I'm gonna challenge the limit. I want to see how big I can make it without making it too ugly to see. Oh, okay. So original photo was decent size, so it's kind of blurry a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. So the challenge is now how you can put the text on it. So let's push it back first. Contrast is weak because of that, so you can increase the contrast by changing the colors and the background colors and stuff like that. And here you could probably use just a white color for the text. And for this, white, try white. It doesn't work, then use different colors. It doesn't work. So you can do other things like a drop shadow. It doesn't have a drop shadow with Google presentation, so instead what you can do is you can do something like this. It's just a background fill. So I'm gonna use my presetting. Okay, it looks pretty good. So the first thing they will see would be the picture, of course, and that's bigger, so has much more impact and memorable. And second thing is because of the contrast, better contrast here than there, so this will be the second thing they will notice. Then there's the last one. And even if you don't have this, it's not going to be too much of a problem. unless your presentation kind of sucks in terms of sequence, then you might want to have this to make sure that you are still staying on a mammo's topic, but you get an idea. So this is not exactly about the multimedia design principles or anything like that anymore, but you're going to be talking about cold-blooded animals later. So if you do a really good job here, it's going to be much easier later when you talk about cold-blooded animal. Okay, so let's see if you are doing a good job describing and explaining warm-blooded. It really does depend on what you're going to talk about here. For now, let me focus on the graphic design and the multimedia learning principles here. You see little pixelations or artifacts from resizing the picture, enlarging the image. So, original photo must have been pretty small. Your students are first graders, so you don't really have to think about too realistic images. Clip arts are fine, but difference between looking professional and not looking professional can still make a difference. So in this case, I would say it's more like a quick and dirty cut and paste kind of image. So you kind of want to eliminate the sense of quick and dirty work by eliminating the extra background elements from this slide. You could make it a little more professional looking. For example, this corner here, it's not exactly part of the image, this is just a background. Here, these four corners. One thing you can do is change the background color of the slide to white. And then you're eliminating one tiny element. So it takes a little load off your student's brain, cognitive processing. The end result is you get a feeling of cleaner. That's what you feel when there's no extra elements interfering with the processing. If you want to stick with the purple background, you could have used some image editing program to erase the white background around the picture. Right now, you are showing an example of mammal, giraffes. And definitely image is important. This is a pretty high quality image. Okay, there are like roughly 6 facts you're covering. Depending on which facts you want your students to remember, you might want to rethink the design of this slide. If all 6 facts are important, this is not strong enough to reinforce what you're talking about. Let's make it bigger to see. Okay, by making it larger, actually it's already doing some good to reinforce the facts you're talking about. For example, now it's easier to see these first 2 facts, world's tallest and also spotted fur. You can show that better now. But this picture is not really supplementing the fact number 2. Eat plants and trees with their long necks. Long necks part is probably, but eating part, not exactly. Over 100 pounds of leaves each week. So the chances are next day your students may not remember this fact anymore, especially this one, because the picture is not showing that the giraffe is eating grass, leaves. So it's possible that they're gonna forget this. Have long tongues, you can't even see the tongue, so probably they're gonna forget unless you do something like you're sticking your tongue out and demonstrate the long tongue, then you might stick, but the picture itself is not going to help this fact stick in their memory. Same with the feed their babies milk. So my suggestion is, if these are equally important, you want them to remember all these facts, you don't have to constrain yourself to just using one slide. Don't be afraid and just use as many slides as possible. It takes to convey, to reinforce the facts you're talking about. So you could use this picture for the first one, world's tallest, and then you could use a different picture, giraffes eating plants, leaves. And for this, then you could have a different picture, a close-up picture of a giraffe's face, head, with the tongue stuck out, and that you could show that. And you could actually talk about spotted fur with this slide, so you can combine this and this together. Then use a different picture for illustrating the milk feed. Okay, you're giving some definition, a brief overview of amphibians. I think it's a good illustration of the cold-blooded. You did a pretty good job describing it. Image quality isn't too bad. A lot of pictures you find on our web are now designed for full screen resolution, so you tend to get little lower quality images, but okay, it's not too bad. Okay, you place the text backbone right above the actual backbone in the image, so that's a good thing. But another thing you could do is you could have colored this image before inserting it into the slide. So you could have colored the backbone with Photoshop or something like that. Another thing you could have done is use a shape or arrow or something like that. If you're having a hard time creating a contrast between the text and the image, you could move it outside the image and use a shape scenario like this to direct the runner's attention to the backbone in the image. So that's an idea. Another thing is this image is pretty pixelated already, so if you can't find a better image, a little more helpful for the students. And if you pay attention to the details, there's something in here, this line, little line here, that's going to momentarily draw students' attention, so get rid of that too if possible. Symbolic use of image is good for certain audience. You're going to have to be careful about using images in a symbolic way, because for some audience that's going to confuse them and give out the wrong information. But if they can make connections, good connections, that's a good learning. But if they fail to make connections between this special kind of vehicle and what you're trying to teach, then you failed. So this is a little tricky one. It can also depend on how you're going to present this slide, this picture, when you talk about it. So in your discussion, in your lecture or speech, if you can make a really good connection between this and the content, then you're going to succeed. So it's up to you. Now he's showing an example of amphibian and using the frog. And there are like 3 facts you're trying to talk about. I see where you're going. So this is like a preview. So giving a preview of these facts, and you're going to explain them, show them one by one next. That's not a bad idea. So you kind of implement the pre-teaching principles to these 4 slides here. This is going to be a pre-teaching, and then you're getting into the details. Repetitions in general make things stick better. So this is going to be the second time they're going to hear about the life cycle. So that's going to help. And I would say this is a pretty good picture. We'll always try to think about the way to make the better use of the space available, space on the slide. So so in many cases you see a lot of space above the title, slide title. So by pushing it up a little bit like this, you have more space below that. Now you can make it a little larger, which means larger image, more impact, and more detail. And if the room is large and people are sitting in the way back, then making it larger, even this much, is going to help. Wow, personally, I don't really want to see this picture. It's going to stick in my memory for 2 months. Hopefully it won't scare your students, but this picture definitely has a strong impact. To increase the impact, you know what to do. Increase the image size and place the text right in the image. And jumping 10 times taller than their height. Okay, so 20 times their body length. So that's what they're trying to show. Trying to illustrate in this is frogs can jump as high as Michael Jordan or something like that. If that's the case, I think that's a really great comparison. You could also use subject matter principle that I talked about for the graphic design principle, and you can use a Michael Jordan or someone like that, some basketball player that everyone knows, because that's going to act as a trigger for later, for them to remember what you're talking about in class. If you have one good trigger, and everything is so well connected, then this trigger is gonna fire up all the connections, and then they're gonna remember more and more things. So having a good trigger in your presentation is really important. And subject matter can be a good trigger. So, and fish. Again, if you want to increase the impact, and if you want to eliminate the extra elements, of course you can fill the whole screen with the image, but this is being rectangular, square, you can't really fill the whole screen, and you could have, so you're gonna have to live with the green backgrounds. If that's the case, probably making it smaller is not gonna be too much of a problem. Still, you wanna make the better use of the available space, so you might want to think about the positioning of the elements. Now you're talking about body temperature. If you're going to use this picture to ask questions like, okay, this is a deep inner sea and it's really cold, what would happen if you are in there? You could ask, are you going to be so cold? What's going to happen to your body temperature? You can ask these questions to your students, and the students are going to say, I'll be so cold, I'm going to freeze to death, or things like that. Then you could direct their attention to this fish, and look at this face, he looks pretty happy and comfortable because he is cold-blooded. Explain that. So it depends on how you're going to use the picture. This might be okay, but this picture itself is not talking about fish are cold-blooded, unlike us, we are warm-blooded, so it's not telling that directly. So if you're going to just show this and say this, then choose a different picture, but it depends on how you're going to use the picture. And the size, again, you could definitely make it larger. I guess you didn't make it large because original image size is small, and by enlarging the picture, it gets ugly. It's also a good practice to make better use of the available space, so make it as large as possible. Then you don't want it to pixelate or get blurry, so always find higher resolution image to begin with. And you're talking on the very right, so this is not actually helping your presentation as a visual aid. If it's not contributing to the main points you're trying to convey, then it is not. This is actually a noise. If it's on there, if they can see it, then it's going to take away the available resources of their cognitive processing, of their brain capacity. So if it's not contributing to the fact that you're trying to convey, then this shouldn't even be there. But then again, just saying fish or aquatic vertebrates, it's not gonna help either. So you want some sort of a graphic representation. So you might want to find something else. Show an example of a fish. So to make it larger. If you want to make the most use of the available space, you definitely fill the whole screen slide with the picture and push it back. And you can still show everything you want to show with much more detail. Okay, same here. If you're trying to apply graphic design principle to the max, then you would definitely make it large, push it back. And you're going to talk about this, you're going to actually see the whole thing. And you don't have to put it here. This way, there are less things to focus on the slide, and they can actually focus on the picture better this way. This can be here, or it's probably okay if you take it out. It's kind of obvious how you transition from one side to another. It's kind of obvious that you're still on the same topic. So if I were you, instead of putting a text like this, I might actually do something like this. And this is more intuitive to show that you're still on the same topic. It kind of creates a tie between this slide and the next slide. So it creates a little better temporal contiguity this way, going from this to this. And you're still saying this fish can be found in here. So it's also a better spatial contiguity. The fish is integrated in a in the background picture, it's better than using a text. So you kind of incorporate a lot of principles in here. Okay, so this is a transitioning slide or opening slide. I can say the same thing to all the transitioning or opening slides. You make better impact by doing something like this. That will give much better impact, and it's easy to signify and have the students understand that the topic has changed. Okay, I changed the text color, but you could probably make it even stand out. If the text is important, you could put a background color behind the text box here. Like another approach you can use is, you're gonna be talking about this anyway. You're gonna probably just saying exactly the same thing. They have feathers, wings, and a beak. You're probably gonna say that. So leave that information to your speaking, and you could probably use something more like, in this example, you'd be just using keyword or labels for each part or each feature or characteristic. This way your audience, your students, are making connections between these labels and graphic characteristics right away. So there's more cognitive processing. You're actually forcing the cognitive processing that are contributing to the learning. So that's a good thing. Okay, birds lay eggs. I guess this is a pretty good structure design. And let's think about the size of the picture. Do you want to make it larger, smaller? Most of the time you don't make it smaller, but think about how big you can make it. Maybe this is good enough, maybe this not. So think about it. And the distance between the audience and the projector is also an factor to think about. I kind of like that idea of vertical alignment here. Birds, picture, and lay eggs. Of course, you can always use my approach, my general approach of filling the whole slide like that, and you know the rest. Same here. Most can fly. That's interesting. Yeah, you can get into discussion here. And of course, you can always use the same approach again. So discuss with your group members if this would do better job or not. This is not exactly a bird picture, so ideally you would actually find a picture for the birds, not for the human. But if the concept of vertebrae is very important, you would use this picture in the beginning when you talk about the first mammal. When you talk about this, you would show this and explain the concept. Touch your backbone, that's a vertebrae, something like that. But at this point, they should know what it is, and it's not really necessary to show the human body at this point. So focus on the bird's anatomy here. Warm-blooded. Hopefully this is illustrating warm-blooded well. What I get from this picture is she's cold. To better illustrate the birds are warm-blooded, you could show a picture of a little girl holding and putting her cheek on little chick, or little bird smiling. That kind of illustrates, bird is not cold, it's comfortable to touch, something like that. Again, it all depends on how you're going to use this picture to illustrate, to explain, or to make connections between this picture and the birds being warm-blooded. If you're just going to talk about the birds that are warm-blooded like us, then personally I would choose a different picture. Depending on how many facts of all these facts you want to emphasize in this lesson, you might want to redesign this slide. If all the 5 facts are important, if you want them to remember all these 5 facts, okay, curved beak, this image is showing that, so it's going to be a good one. 4 toes, and you can't really see 4 toes in this photo, can you? if you can, if the picture is actually illustrating that, then it's too small to see, so make it larger. And live in warm places, you can't really see that from the picture. Eat fruit, nuts, and seeds, you can't see them eating those things, so it's better if you can actually show the picture of them eating at least one of them. Can copy what you say. Okay, depending on your students' living environment and upbringing, they might not have heard or seen parents doing that. So if you're a good comedian, you can imitate it. In many cases, it's hard, so you might want to show a video clip, like 10 seconds video clip. Wow, that's a good photo. The fact that there's a black surrounding makes it even scarier. Let's see what's gonna happen if I do this. Whoa, that's not scary, but now it's kind of gross. But that's one of the things you always try, how large you can make the picture. How much larger you can make the picture, that's one thing you want to try. Once you get used to it, you probably start from the, this. Then if it doesn't work, you might want to do something like, start thinking about the positioning and size. But that was your idea, and wow, well, visually it's not too bad. Theoretically, this should work better. Of course, you're gonna have to think about the positioning in the text or highlight contrast. Of course, you're gonna have to think about the contrast between the text and the background, but you know what to do. Okay, here you're talking about the body temperature again, cold-blooded. So again, it all depends on how you're gonna present the information, but I could see where you're going with this. Soft-shelled eggs, you can see the eggs shells are pretty soft. You find a pretty good picture. Dry, scaly skin. Wow, definitely it's a scaly skin. Kind of even look dry too. Breathe air. Okay. I wonder why it is important. Wow, right. Fish doesn't breathe air, that's why. You're trying to distinguish that. And when you say breathe air, the picture is not really showing that the snake is breathing, so you could probably put some, shape here to show that the snake is exhaling or inhaling. Maybe exhaling is easier. Maybe you could use a speech bubble like this to show that the snake is breathing. Snakes are carnivores, eat meat, and they eat their food whole. Okay, so you could show a picture, but better yet, video might be an even better idea to illustrate this. This example is like an animation well done. You don't want unnecessary animations, but in this case, you limit it to you pared it down to essentials, so that's alright. And this interactivity is also good, so you kind of implemented the interactivity principle as well. And by using the motions, it's kind of like an extension of a signaling principle. So you apply lots of principles in here. Of course, if you could find a chick without the background, that could have been even better. And same with the frog and the fish. If you're pretty comfortable with image editing, you could easily, crop the photo. So you can make, instead of using a rectangle shape, you can make it round or circle, You can make both pictures circle around, or you can use round corners, or you can also make them the same shape and same size. It's a tiny thing, but it kind of eliminates extra elements by doing that. Same here. But you did a pretty good job in terms of a summary quiz or review session. And it's a pretty good way to end the whole presentation. You're ending the presentation with a high note, so it's pretty good. So discuss with your group or think about the suggestions I made on your own and decide what sort of changes you want to make to this. I'm looking forward to seeing what you decide to do.